and still, like Kashawn Murphy, my apologies, had 18 points as well. But you needed some more people to knock down some shots because it did look like in some crunch moments there late in the game, they started having just bonehead mistakes in the worst timing possible because I think it was like what was about 50 something seconds left, a minute and some change left, and Mississippi State, they take the lead, go up by one, then it's going back and forth, back and forth. But the rest of the way, they were self-inflicted mistakes because they were missing shots. They felt like they were rushing a three instead of trying to find the open looks. And when they had them, they just didn't fall down because you look at the 3-point percentage, they went 8 for 25 as a team from three, and they had some good looks. They had some opportunities throughout the game, but they weren't able to execute them and knock them down. But Josh Hubbard, yeah, like he was the best player on the court last night. Shout out to Youngblood as well. But as far as looking the competition in the face and understanding that, okay, if nobody else is gonna make a shot, by God, I'll do what I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for Mississippi State, you're just a few pieces away from truly, and to your point, kind of like last year they were a scrappy bunch, but you never had a scoring threat like Josh Hubbard. Well, Josh Hubbard late, but the way that he's able to go and find his shots throughout the court, he had some tough looks. And I think overall defensively for Alabama, you tried to match their physicalness, but you ended up making some shots because you think about the second to last possession for Mississippi State where they find an open look in the basket, like at the rim on a fast break, and he misses.
Mm-hmm.
And Alabama contesting that last shot throws a little bit off. And I think the free throw percentage as well for Mississippi State, they left a lot of change out there.
I mean, that almost lost Alabama the game, too,
Yep.
because you had that stretch there where you had, Grant Nelson misses 2, then Mo Diabate gets the rebound, then he misses a free throw.
Yep.
And then you had another opportunity later where you went 1-1, and then, Chris Youngblood iced it. But the free throws have been a problem for Alabama, too, and they almost bit them last night.
Yeah, and you could tell that Mark Sears was, I'm not going to say he was playing out of pocket, but at first he wasn't as aggressive as you wanted him to be to respond from what happened in the second half. Again, going, for the first couple minutes without taking a shot, only taking one shot. It's like, big dog, like you're back out there now. Like now's the time to change all this. And he had some big baskets. They played him exceptionally well because it felt like after every pick and roll, they were hedging him. Like they were bringing somebody else to double team him. He was having to pick up his dribble, work away around. Because you think about the turnover that he did have, he was trying to throw it across.
Where he threw it into the stands.
Yeah, like situations like that. So a lot of credit to Mississippi State for making it hard for Alabama and just showing that, hey, you're going to have to earn this win. And they did. And that's another thing for Alabama sitting here as the number 4 team in the nation is just finding ways to win at this point because we know what this gauntlet is going to be in the SEC. And as long as you have more wins than losses on your record, you'll take them however you can. And winning games on the road, to your point, another number 1 in the Ken Palm ranking as far as victories are concerned. So for this Alabama team, you needed a game like this of, okay, because go back a couple weeks ago when they lost to Ole Miss and how physical Ole Miss was in the rebounding categories and just being more physical overall as a team. But now they responded to another team like Mississippi State and how physical that they were, and they matched it and actually threw some more, some elbows and getting after it on the defensive side as well. So I think for Alabama, you needed to see that you can win ugly and win it in a situation like this against a top 15 ranked Mississippi State Bulldogs team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think outside of, just in SEC play, I know they had some really good non-conference wins, obviously. But outside of the going to Rupp Arena and dropping 100 on Kentucky and getting that win, I think this is Alabama's best win in conference play so far. Because, this Mississippi State team is good. Make no mistake about it. Right now, if the tournament started today, they would probably be a 4 seed in the field. This team is absolutely no slouch, and like we were kind of talking about, I think this version of Mississippi State is potentially even more dangerous than some of the teams we've seen here in recent memory, and they've been a solid program for a number of years now. So that was a very solid win for Alabama going on the road. I guess if I don't know if I want to say it this way, but now your next 3 games coming up, you don't play any top 25 teams. How about that? When you look at all things considered in the SEC, and not saying that these games are easy or that you overlook them, but maybe a little bit of a breather because you don't have to play a top 25 team for 2 more weeks because you have Georgia coming up this weekend. Then you get to go to Fayetteville and play Coach Cal in Arkansas. And then you get to go to Austin to play Texas. And that's your next 3 games. And then, of course, following that, 2 Saturdays from now, we get the first IBOB of the season. And that is those 2 games, that one and then the Auburn, Alabama game we're going to get as the regular season finale. I think those are potentially going to be the 2 best games, not in all of college basketball in the regular season.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And speaking of those Auburn Tigers, how about their win over LSU last night, 87-74? And for one thing about Janai Broome, he's healthy. He's healthy.
He looks fine. Looks fine.
And just to show the dominance that he had, just 26 and 16. Just, added 3 blocks as well.
He had 11 offensive rebounds by himself. LSU had that many as a team.
He is out to prove a point. Like those 2 games that he missed, it was like, okay, just get me healed up. We'll do what we need to do. Shout out to the
Cooper Flag, who?
Right. Shout out to the Auburn training staff and the medical facilities and everything that they have, because they've gotten Janai Broome. I don't know what shot or what serum they gave him, but him jumping back into this lineup, you saw a little bit of it in Tennessee over the weekend. But last night, the way that he performed, he could do whatever he wanted on the floor. Like, getting rebounds, being the more physical guy throughout the game. Looking for his shot. I think for Auburn, you needed to see that. You need to say, okay, now that we got you back, I hope you're ready to carry this team on your back, because we did what we needed to do while you were gone for those 2 games. But I do think that collectively, the depth that Auburn has is still one of the best, if not the best roster in college basketball, because they're just so deep. And I think for Janai Broome, in 33 minutes of play to have 26 and 16 just kind of shows that, okay, he is as advertised, and him coming back for another year only takes this Auburn team to another level. And he showed it on full display last night.
Yeah. And I think last night was another game where you can look at Auburn and go, all right, you didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but you still find a way to win on the road. And a big part of that was, defensively for Auburn, and then what they did on the offensive glass. They just absolutely dismantled LSU in that regard. Like I said, Janai Broome had as many offensive rebounds single-handedly as LSU has an entire team. The other big part of it, LSU turns the ball over 20 times, which, as we remember, going back to Alabama's loss against Ole Miss, you're not really going to win basketball games, especially in the SEC this year, when you turn the ball over 20 times. And so while you look at it, and LSU shot the ball pretty well, especially early on. They really couldn't miss early on in the game, but Auburn attempted 80 shots last night.
Yep.
LSU attempted 51. 51.
Shoot more.
That's
scoreboard.
why you lost the basketball game. You turned the ball over 20 times and you let Auburn grab how many 25 offensive rebounds. Yes.
Offensive rebounds.
So that's 45 extra possessions technically for Auburn between the turnovers and then the offensive rebounds, or I guess second chance opportunities. That's going to make a difference for you, no doubt about it. I know Auburn had, I believe, 22 or 24 points off of turnovers strictly for LSU. And so when you win the game by 13, it's pretty easy for LSU to look and see what went wrong for them. But Cam Carter had a good game for LSU, though, 24 points. He's the leading scorer in the SEC so far this season. But just too much state of Alabama for LSU here these last 2 times out, with losses to now Alabama and Auburn. And now LSU finds themselves 12-8 and 1-6 in the SEC. And Auburn has tied their record for best start in program history through 20 games. They are 19-1 and 7-0 in the SEC.
Yeah, and I think for Auburn, and like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, I don't think LSU, it's hard to say, like, they're not as bad as their record shows.
No, because they got some players.
They do, and that's what, it's so puzzling about this LSU team is, like, they're right there. They'll miss a couple shots here, and it becomes a snowball effect where you need somebody on the other end besides Carter to just help you out.
Yeah, they're the worst 3-point shooting team percentage-wise in the SEC, and that has been a big problem.
It has, because they don't have just an offensive guy that can just, besides Cam Carter, it's okay, we need somebody else as
It's
well.
hard to go on a run when
Exactly.
you're trailing and trying to get back into things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do think that Auburn, I mean, they showed it. I mean, Janai Broome, he's the engine. And I think if you're Bruce Pearl, having him back and now you see that he's 100%, you can rock with him. And I think for Auburn, the depth that they have, of course, I mean, Todd Pettiford didn't have necessarily the best game statistically, but he ended up, giving you 10 points. Chad Baker Mazar with 11, Miles Kelly giving you 13 to help with Janai Broome's 26 as well. But I just came away. I came away one saying, okay, if this Auburn team continues to play at this level, they're going to be difficult to beat, no matter how you slice it up. Because I do think defensively, they make it difficult for teams to make shots. They're very suppressing. And then on the offensive end, they have the old school feel. Like we'll give it to our big man, let him work down there on the block. And the guys that are, running the floor, they're around when they spread things out. As long as you make your shots, you're going to be just fine because if they play the game inside out. And I think for the way basketball is now and how positionless that it's become, a lot of teams just want to be able to get on runs, but also what Janai Broome presents on the defensive side of, okay, it's not going to be any sort of easy baskets if you get down to the paint because Janai is still holding things down as far as his defensive presence is concerned. But I think an overall just a great game for Auburn and getting this win over LSU and just continuing to show why they're number one team in the country.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And now you get to turn your sights to the weekend where you get to travel to Oxford, Mississippi, take on an Ole Miss team that they were in action last night as well. And so you have Ole Miss, then you get to play Oklahoma, then you have Florida,
Yeah.
Vanderbilt, and then Alabama. So Alabama gets one of those midweek kind of buys there in between now and the first matchup with Auburn. But Auburn, 4 games to go between now and the first Iron Bowl of basketball, and it starts off this weekend down there in Oxford with Ole Miss. But as I mentioned, Ole Miss also in action last night, and it was a great game. It was at the same time as the Alabama and Mississippi State game, so I know a lot of people maybe got to only tune in for the very end of it, but some more great SEC hoops action to get to. We want to hear from you as well. What do you think of Alabama and Auburn going on the road, getting some big wins in SEC hoops, and anything else that's on your mind? We want to hear from you, 205-834-9450. We'll continue to break down a big night in SEC hoops when we return here on JOX 94.5. 6:21 here on your Thursday morning. You're listening to Morning JOX. Conrad and Damian here with you. Recapping a couple of big SEC road wins for Alabama and Auburn hoops last night. Auburn taking down LSU there on the road. Alabama squeaking by Mississippi State and Starkville. And there's another big game in the SEC last night that came down to the final seconds. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to share our thoughts and prayers for all the people involved, unfortunately, in the plane crash that we saw over Washington, D.C. last night. If you haven't seen the story yet, there was a helicopter and an American Airlines flight that crashed over Washington, D.C. last night. More information still coming out seemingly by the minute, but we now know very sadly that some of the members of the American Airlines flight were members of the United States ice skating community, as well as some of their family members and their coaches. So thoughts and prayers out there with all of the victims that we're thinking about, all of them this morning here on JOX 94.5. But we do want to remind you that No Shoes Nation is headed to a new dimension here in 2025. And Kenny Chesney is going to be live at the Sphere in Las Vegas for 12 shows this May and this June, and you could be there to take it all in. One lucky winner is going to score a trip for two to this once-in-a-lifetime concert experience, including round-trip airfare to Las Vegas, a 2-night stay at the Virgin Hotel, entry into the VIP pool party, and 2 VIP tickets to see Kenny Chesney live at the Sphere. To enter, all you have to do is text the national keyword TWICE to 95819. Again, text TWICE, TWICE, to 95819. Contest rules are available for you at joxfm.com.
Would you say Kenny Chesney's quality music?
Yeah, I mean, I think he makes good music. I do not listen to country music, so
Gotcha.
That's not my forte.
Oh, okay. He's got some good songs. When the Sun Goes Down.
Yeah, it's better than some of the other country music that's out there.
Yeah, classic.
A lot of it.
Yeah. Depends on your flavor of the month.
It does.
It depends on, again, like compared to what? That's the question. What are we comparing it to? But he's there's a reason why he's at the Sphere.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. And I'll just say this. Even if I'm not a huge, the biggest Kenny Chesney fan in the world, I would go see anybody perform at the Sphere.
Yeah.
That place looks awesome. That is definitely on the bucket list for one day. I don't care who it is. I don't know. U2's probably still playing there. They played there like 100 shows in a row or something when it opened. So I don't care. I'll go see anybody there. But yeah, that's awesome. And hopefully one of our listeners gets to win the lucky prize. That would be a very, very cool experience.
Absolutely. But we did have some action last night as well, besides just Alabama and Auburn. How about the Chris Beard Bowl in college basketball between Ole Miss and Texas? And Ole Miss squeaks by with a 72-69 win over the Texas Longhorns. And just flipping back and forth from that game and the Alabama game, it felt as though like Texas, from the times that I've watched Texas play, they're very similar to LSU, where I watched them, I'm like, they're not bad, but they're also not great. They're just kind of in that middle ground of, okay, if they play like they're supposed to, if they play up to the level of their competition, they can hang with them. It's just they don't know how to. It's either they don't know how to finish, or when it comes down to the crunch moments, they don't have anybody that they can just hang their hat on and say, hey, we need you to take this game over and go on about it. But I think for Ole Miss, one thing you can't deny about Ole Miss is very similar to their football team, is they're more physical than you would think. Because I think the mantra of Ole Miss is they're very just flashy. Like you think of, the old days of they'll live and die by the 3-point shot. Not to say that they still don't, but I think that they have a presence in kind of just, not to necessarily say I'm comparing them to Janai Broome, but their big men are still active. Like they get their big men involved in a game where everything is just so spread out. But they have old school philosophies of, we'll give our big man, if he goes out there and gives me 10 and 10, we'll be good. But I think for Texas, you're hitting this wall of, okay, you're either going to find yourself so deep down the totem pole that it's going to be hard you pretty much have to win the SEC tournament to find yourself in a better seeding position. but also you haven't really gone out and just dominated, or you need these big game wins in order to truly hang, like to be in the ball field and be in the ball game. Because I think Oklahoma's kind of find themselves in the same spot of, all right, it's a little different than basketball season. Like now we appreciate what y'all have done and bringing some of the eyeballs to the SEC, but now y'all gonna have to play. And not to say that the Big 12, when they were in there, wasn't, just a laughing stock, but we knew who those top teams were in the Big 12. We're in the SEC. It's kind of a year by year basis at this point. But I think last night, Trey Johnson have given you 22 points, but he had to take 16 shots to get them, and he only made 6 of them. Now, I do think he's probably the most aggressive person that you have on the floor at all times because he's still looking for his shot. But everything else around Texas, you need some help. You need some help, especially when your 3-point shot isn't falling down like it was last night. To go 5 from 22 from 3, you need some extra pieces to truly compete with some of the bigger names and the bigger competition that you have in the SEC. And I just don't know if Texas – I just don't think Texas has it right now. Now, it could be, they just they're figuring things out along the way, but you have to steal wins like these in order to truly put yourself in the position where you can compete game in and game out with this SEC conference in basketball.
Yeah, and this is life in the SEC now, right? You brought it up. You come over from the Big 12 that for, at least in recent memory, I think we would all have said is the best conference in college basketball. And you come to the SEC and you think, okay, we'll take a step up in football and then basketball. Not saying that the SEC's been bad, but, maybe a little bit easier than the Big 12. And then you come in to the SEC and it's the best year the conference has had in my lifetime, right? And so you come in thinking, okay, maybe it'll be a little bit easier for us in the basketball world, and it ends up being more difficult. And you look at what Texas did over the weekend, and you come back from that 22-point deficit against Texas A&M. You get that, I guess, kind of that marquee win you were talking about in SEC play to hang high on your resume, and then you turn around in this game, and again, it wasn't the complete opposite of the A&M game, but Texas had a lead for a good chunk of the early portions of this game, and you just kind of felt like, okay, like, maybe that Texas A&M, like that win kind of just ignited the spark, and now we're about to see Texas take off, and they're going to be that next team to kind of cement themselves in the NCAA tournament from the conference. But hey, credit to Chris Beard and his guys for finding a way to fight back into this game. Texas, you had an open look at the end. Trey Johnson had an open look from 3 to tie the game, send it to overtime. He's just not able to hit because, like you said, you shoot 22% from 3 last night. Even though you get an open look, it was just one of those nights where those shots aren't really falling for you. And so now if you're Texas, you find yourself you've crawled out of the cellar. You're still above Oklahoma, you're above LSU, you're above Arkansas, you're above South Carolina, but you find yourself right there with Georgia. And we all know the kind of week, or I guess last 2 weeks now, that Georgia's had where they were riding pretty high. And then that all came tumbling down for them, and they're, trying to get back on track. They got the win over South Carolina the other night, but this is a Texas team that it looked like they were starting to build that momentum. And as we know here in the SEC, it's not difficult for a team to kind of humble you a little bit back and bring you back to reality. And now the good news, I guess, if you're Texas, is you get to go on the road to LSU.
Yep.
You have Arkansas. You have Vanderbilt's going to be very tough, but that's a top 25 win potentially that you could have there. So it's not going to be easy the rest of the way, but you have to play Alabama. You have to play Kentucky back to back. But you get those games at home there in the middle part of February. And outside of that, you get Arkansas twice, Georgia, LSU, South Carolina, Oklahoma. Like, you've got some opportunities to climb back in this thing and finish above 500 in the SEC. It's just, we're going to see what Rodney Terry and his guys are made of. And, I'm not rooting for Texas, but we want as many SEC teams to get in the tournament as possible, right? So we need to pick it up a little bit.
Yeah, and for Ole Miss too, like if you're Chris Beard, you kind of wanted this one. You wanted this one for sure.
This one means something.
It did, and you could tell from the joy from Ole Miss side of things, like they really wanted this win. And I think for Texas, like you said, that stretch that they're going to have again, you just don't want to find yourself. You don't want to find yourself in the bottom of the barrel and trying to work your way up. You have to get some of these wins against quality competition in the SEC. That's if you want to be taken serious. Because to me, I think because a lot of the teams in the SEC are so, I mean, they're stacked. And the journey that it takes for Texas to find themselves in these positions, one that you're it's not like Ole Miss was that much more that much better than you. It wasn't like it was Ole Miss came in as the more dominant team because they didn't even. When you look at their stats and you look at their numbers, they shot 39% from the field. They went 7 for 21 from three. Now they did do a better. I mean, they did go to the free throw line a little bit, 11 more times than you did. But you can't find yourself in those positions where you're giving them more opportunities to kind of build on leads. And to your point, yeah, they had a lead for a good bit of the game, but then once the snowball started to roll, it just felt like Texas was more, they were trying to press and play not to lose than to actually play to win. So I think that for Texas, in order to find yourself in a position where you're not scraping at the bottom, you've got to find ways to win those ball games. You got to be able to turn the team over and find ways to to execute. And it's easier said than done because I do think Ole Miss is a tough bunch. I do think that the things that they're able to do on the floor can cause a lot of mismatch problems because again, I mean, when you look at Padula, once he starts getting hot, it's kind of you need somebody on your side to try to match those points because he finishes with 19 and also Dre Davis with 17 as well. So I think that for Texas right now, you're almost where Texas A&M was for a long time of, okay, how can we get over that hump?
Mm-hmm.
How can we get over that hump? Because the schedule isn't necessarily going to get quote unquote easier, but you've got to find ways to steal some of these bigger wins against quality competition in the SEC if you really want to be taken seriously and also find yourself in good footing getting set for the NCAA tournament if you do get a bid.
Yeah, well, that recaps last night around the SEC. A great night, 3 great games last night. And now, if you haven't looked already, I hope you're not doing anything on Saturday because you're going to want to be watching SEC hoops pretty much all day. There are some great games this weekend. So we start off at 11 a.m. in the SEC, a top 10 matchup. You have Florida traveling to Knoxville to take on a Tennessee team that's lost 2 games in a row now, looking to get back on track. That's going to be a great game. At 12, you have Missouri, Mississippi State. That's a top 20 matchup in the SEC. At 1 o'clock, you've got Auburn on the road at Ole Miss. Another top 25 matchup. You also have Georgia traveling to Coleman to take on Alabama. That game's going to be at 3 o'clock. And at least from a storyline perspective, I think the game that a lot of us are very interested to see and just kind of the atmosphere surrounding it is that Arkansas-Kentucky game.
Oh, yeah.
Coach Cal returning to Rupp Arena for the first time as a member of the Arkansas Razorbacks. That's going to be your 8 p.m. tip on ESPN. So, yeah, you have a great slate of SEC hoops coming up all day long on Saturday. Can't wait for that. We'll spend some time previewing that tomorrow. But we do have, when we return here, we have a little bit of college football news. Notre Dame finds themselves a new defensive coordinator. We also have the Senior Bowl going down in Mobile. What are some of the early buzz with some familiar names from the SEC? We'll break all that down for you when we return right here on Morning JOX.
6:39 here on Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell, alongside Conrad Van Order, and you as well, our wonderful listeners. 205-834-9450. It's quality music, Conrad.
I like this song.
Who is it?
Oh, do you like it too, Damien?
It's not bad.
The band's actually called St. Lucia.
St. Lucia. Okay.
That's where I went on my honeymoon. Nice place.
Yeah, nice vibe. Nice vibe. That's what we consider quality music right there. That's all you get from 6 to 7 on Morning JOX. JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and you as well. We'll go to the JOX text line as a recap. Some big games over the SEC last night, with Auburn getting a 87-74 victory over LSU on the road. Also, Alabama traveling to Starkville, Mississippi to knock off the Mississippi State Bulldogs 88-84. And right across the road there in Oxford, Mississippi, the Ole Miss Rebels knocked off the Texas Longhorns 72-69. So as we go to the JOX text line, Fanboy texts in. He says, Bama basketball is exciting, and we're not sitting nowhere without Mo D and Holloway. Them boys are special. Yeah, I mean, Aiden Holloway, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. It's just, maybe the fit at Auburn wasn't the most ideal situation to be in. But like Conrad said, I think you could kind of sit back on both Auburn and Alabama side of hand, like, hey, this transfer worked. Auburn has shown that they didn't drop off. If anything, they've gotten better, and Alabama has gotten better with Aiden Holloway on the floor as well. So I think it was an addition by subtraction if you're Auburn, and for Alabama, you'll take it, because just what he's been able to do for you, even coming off the bench and just being that consistent spark offensively in a system that he can just hoop, and he's done a great job for Alabama in his time there. John texted in about Texas. Is that Texas' own ball defense is so good they stay in games. But I watched 4 games this year, and they don't have a dog when the game is on the line and he can take over. A consistent guy that can take the team on his back and hit that shot. Yeah, that's how I feel about him. They have nobody that I quote unquote fear if I'm a defensive guy guarding these guys. It's okay if they're open. If he makes a shot, so be it. If he doesn't, it's kind of what we expect. But you want to make it tough for him. But I do think Texas is just missing that dude.
Yeah, and I mean, Trey Johnson is their best player, and he can score, but he's a freshman, right? And that's kind of the problem you get yourselves into is, do you want to have to put all of that weight on his shoulders? And unfortunately last night, he had the last shot and it didn't go in. But I mean, he's been a very good player for them. But yeah, I mean, he's young.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. With you see it in March Madness times, the teams that have veteran players and veteran guards in particular, they tend to.
It's very important.
Yeah, they tend to last longer in the NCAA tournament because of just the experience that they have, and also just a lot of basketball that they've played. And I think for Texas, because you're banking on your freshman to go out there and perform, I mean, he's still a freshman. He's still, coming in. He's looked at as the guy, but also he needs some help around him. And I think for Texas right now, you're sitting at 14-7. You're 3-5 in conference play, and you know how this conference is. You can't fall victim into not being on your A game pretty much every single game that you play, because you're not as talented as some of the teams that are at the top because of the players that they have on the floor and the experience that they have. Like Janai Broom's been playing basketball for 10 years at this point, and he's done nothing but dominate. And you saw it last night against LSU, where any spot on the floor that he wanted the ball, he got to it. He also hustled. He gave you the rebounds offensively and defensively. And there's not anybody that can really match that.
Yep.
You can have if you have a big on the opposing team, he's going to have to work his tail off because he sees number 4 across from him. And the same thing with Alabama. It's you got Mark Sears and a lot of guys that have played a lot of basketball, but the system in which they play, if you're not going up and down the floor matching shot for shot, it's going to be hard to slow the game down and get them out of their A game because of just, again, the veteran presence that they have. And they're not banking on, they're banking on their freshmen to have their roles, but not expecting them to be the number 1 guy. And I think Texas is kind of falling victim to that as they still find themselves in the middle of the pack when it comes to SEC play.
No, I think you're spot on with Texas there. And yeah, it's just, again, nights like last night, it's just a reminder of how good the SEC is you can feel great and you can have a great miraculous comeback win over a top 15 team in the country one day. and you can play a couple of days later and even, as we talked about, have a lead, feel good about the spot you're in, and it can all just kind of crumble away from you in the last couple of minutes. And that's just life in the SEC this year. Teams are going to have to learn how to finish. And I mean, you even go back to the Kentucky Tennessee game a couple nights ago. It was a great game. And, you look at a Kentucky team that's had a great season so far, and they're, hanging on for dear life there at the end of the game. And so it's affecting everybody. This is not just Texas is new in the SEC, or, Ole Miss isn't used. I mean, we've seen it with Alabama and Auburn. Hell, that was Auburn's first road win in the SEC by double digits, right?
Yep.
Like all of their games against Texas and South Carolina and Georgia, those were close games. And I think we all agreed that Auburn's significantly better than them, but just goes to show you how there's no easy game in the SEC. Even a South Carolina team that's on an 8-game losing streak. Ask Florida
Yep.
about playing them.
Uh-huh.
Ask Auburn. Yeah.
But it's just what the SEC is on the basketball front. For everything that we may have been frustrated about in football season, all eyes are on us when it comes to basketball. So we shall see where it goes from here on out. Also, some college football news, as Conrad alluded to right before the break. Ohio State, Notre Dame, they've had some changes with Coach Golden's taking his talents to the NFL to be a defensive coordinator there for the Cleveland Browns. But now they've got a pretty familiar face, somebody that we've heard across the way here in college football, as Chris Ash has accepted the position of becoming Notre Dame's next defensive coordinator. And somebody that's he's been in the NFL, he's been in the SEC and college football. I'm trying to think, wasn't he?
He was at Arkansas.
And wasn't he at Texas?
I think he was at Texas. He was at Texas in 2020.
Okay. So
and then not in the SEC, but he was at Ohio State when they won the national championship in 2014, the first year of the 14 playoff. He was co-DC for them that year. So he's been around high-level college football for a long time.
Absolutely. And I think for Marcus Freeman, a younger guy at the head coaching position, having somebody with as much experience as Coach Ash has on the defensive side, I think is going to help them all together. And I think for Notre Dame, now it's, okay, you've been to the mountaintop, didn't get a chance to win it. Now it's all about staying there. This is a consistency part. Getting to the top is, as far as anybody will tell you, that's the easy part. It's staying there. That's the hard part. And I think for Notre Dame, when you lose somebody with so much defensive knowledge as Al Golden, and replace that with a Chris Ash who's coached some big time level defenses, I think that's going to be fine for Notre Dame moving forward.
Think about this. So of the final 4 teams that you had in the CFP, 3 of the 4 have lost their defensive coordinator already. Now, granted, one of them just went to Penn State took Ohio State's from them after Tom Allen went to Clemson. But yeah, so Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State all having to find new defensive coordinators already. So I guess if you're a Texas fan, you're feeling pretty good because you're the one team out of that bunch that hasn't had to do that so far. But I guess you thought you were going to lose your head coach there for a couple days. So that's maybe that evens it all out. But yeah, again, it's, we're used to this here in the SEC, right? You have success. Guys are going to move on, get better opportunities. And it's about your ability to reload. And that's what has made, obviously, what Nick Saban did for so long, what Kirby's been able to do at Georgia, being able to go out and replace high-level coordinators on and sometimes feels like a yearly basis. It's not an easy thing to do, but that's what it takes to stay at the top in college football. So we're going to see how some of these hires play out. And yeah, if you're Ohio State, you just hope that Chip Kelly's going to hang on with you for another year. So some big coaching moves there in the world of college football. But we do, as we mentioned earlier, the Senior Bowl going down there in Mobile. Some early reports coming out. How's Jalen Milroe looking? How's Jackson Dart looking? Seems like there's some good, some bad with some of these big names here in the SEC down at the Senior Bowl. So when we come back here, we'll recap what we're hearing from the Senior Bowl down there in Mobile as it regards SEC talent. You're listening to Morning JOX here on JOX 94.5.
Now this is quality music for sure. Happy birthday, Phil Collins. Let me see how old he is. Phil Collins is celebrating a birthday.
He's what, like 60?
Oh, he is 74 years of age.
Oh,
today.
real? Oh, I didn't know he's that old.
Yeah. So happy birthday, Phil Collins.
Tarzan soundtrack, maybe the best movie soundtrack ever.
It's up there. It's up there for sure.
He was working like the rent was due on Tarzan.
They said that brother don't miss. But yes, welcome back into Morning JOX. JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order here with you for a few more moments as we get you set for McElroy and Kublik in the morning. As we know, the Senior Bowl. This will be the first weekend without football. Well, technically, not college or NFL, but there's still going to be an exhibition game with the Senior Bowl this weekend.
Wait, the Pro Bowl Skills Challenge? Come on, Damian.
Like I said, this will be the first weekend without some good quality football. Well, I didn't think the Senior Bowl will be good because, again, we get a chance to see a lot of these guys that we saw over the season get a chance to cement themselves, getting ready for the NFL, and then try to improve their draft stock in a lot of areas. You see that Dylan Gabriel's going to have all three of his teams represented on his helmet.
I did see that. I also saw somebody try to make a mock-up for Bear Alexander, and it just there are too many logos. But,
yeah,
but yeah, no, I did see that Dylan Gabriel. Yeah, he's going to have the UCF, the Oklahoma, and the Oregon stickers.
Oh boy, I swear.
This
is the new normal.
This is the future. We need to make them decide, right? Like when you go into the Hall of Fame, and I guess we see this. I feel like we see this more in baseball more than anything. But you have to pick the team that you're going to, I guess, associate yourself with in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Make them pick. Because just think. In the future, you're going to have guys, if nothing changes, that have played for 4 different schools.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Didn't Bo Nix have one side Auburn, one side Oregon?
I think so. See, I could live with that. If you spent a couple years at school and then you transferred somewhere else, had a lot of success, and you had a good foundation in both places, I don't have a problem with that. But
what if TJ Finley gets an invite to a Senior Bowl?
He's not. He's not. I just don't think that any of us need to see that. But quickly, some of the reports coming out: Jalen Milroe had some good moments, had some bad moments, looked good, had some couple deep balls that looked good. Also had a really ugly interception that Alabama fans will look familiar.
Oh boy.
But it does seem like Jackson Dart, who didn't have a great first day, heard that he had an excellent day yesterday and really started to turn some heads. So maybe Jackson Dart finds himself in the first round conversation.
Look at Lane. He can develop quarterbacks. Mac and Cube in the morning, the next.